we continue to delve deeper into the fascinating world of films, pop culture, and how it intersects with contemporary gender issues. Our next panel is titled Pop Culture Unplugged, Redefining Storytelling. In conversation with Swati Chopra, the entertainment editor at the Quint, the guests will attempt to look back at how the industry has evolved and shifted away from traditional and stereotypical representations. Our lineup for the panel include filmmaker Vikramaditya Motwane, whose diverse portfolio includes Udaan, Lutera, Trapped, Sacred Games, and the recent OTT release Control with Ananya Pandey. Huma Qureshi, whose versatile performances span across films like Badlapur, Gangs of Wasepur, and the web series Maharani, among others. Screenwriter Atika Chohan, who has written for films like Chapak, Guilty, Agra, Ulaj, and Margarita with a Straw, among others. Mayank Shekhar, journalist and editor known for his in-depth analysis and critiques of the Indian film industry. And Sohini Bhattacharya, the CEO of Breakthrough. I welcome you all to the stage.
So thank you so much for joining us as we talk about pop culture unplugged and redefining storytelling. But before we get into that, there's a storyteller among us who made this horror film recently. Have you guys watched it? Have you guys watched this horror film called Control? Huh? So before, I mean, okay, so let's call it CTRL since that makes Mayank happier.
Pronounce it Control.
Control. So can we please congratulate him and really give it up for the fabulous film that he's made. Okay, and now coming back to why we're here, redefining storytelling. So this question is for all of you, so anyone can just start with this. Over the last decade, have you guys, kind of observed an evolution in the entertainment industry when it comes to portraying gender and challenging stereotypes? Vikram, would you like to start?
Me? Oh. I think it's compared to where we were, I'd say 15 years ago, yes. I think the short answer is yes. I think that's purely because the one-size-fits-all formula of 15 years ago it doesn't apply anymore today. We don't have to only make movies for theaters, we can make series, we can make many, many different things. And women have been the leads in a lot of those, series, a lot of those shows, and some movies right now. So, yes, short answer is yes. I think just the fact that one is able to sort of like have women in the lead of a lot of content, much as we hate that word, is already a positive sign. But yes, I think far more nuanced storytelling will help. It's definitely better. So yeah. I mean, in terms of the, I'm not even sure. I think Atika is probably a better place to answer in terms of like.
I think my short answer is that the fact that I'm on this panel today with some kind of like a career which has like 10 releases and 15 years of like hardcore writing is itself an answer that the fact that I am basically may have just come into the workforce at the time that things have begun to change and we were all ready to like jump into the OTT momentum and possibly like take full advantage of it when it actually the opportunities came along and money came along for diverse storytellers. So I think I am myself an example of that because I remember a time when it was just impossible and I don't think it has, I mean I'm not completely over the fact that that struggle is over, but it's definitely, the opportunities are definitely there.
Mayank?
I mean, it depends on the time frame, and of course, anything can always be better than it was in the past. But I mean, growing up, I mean, I remember, being fed an unhealthy diet of popular entertainment, like all of us. It was incredible to watch the representation of women in mainstream popular movies. And I personally think that, like they say movies really kind of determine our fashion and our hair and stuff. I think that is overstated. Very hardcore fans will, have their hair the same way because Sanjay Dutt, etc. have. And I think the notion of romance comes a lot from the movies. And we grew up in the 90s with persistence as being the commonest root of love, right? So the guy would be, could be Anil Kapoor under Madhuri Dixit's house and constantly just stalking her, and one day he actually gets that girl. Likewise, you would have, Akshay Kumar, and he would be doing chedkhani to the heroine, and that is literally chedkhani is molestation, right? And she would just respond in a way that is a no, but that meant that she's very tikhi, and these are all songs. And these are stuff that we've grown up on, and it seemed to be okay. And so if that's okay on screen, then to the person who's watching, that seems to be okay in the world too. So it was a bizarre sensibility of the 90s that we or the 80s far more actually. That we got, and now when you compare it to that time, hell yeah, it's another level, right? We're also if you go further back in the 70s, the Prem Chopras of the world where rape itself was an object of titillation, It starts with Prem Chopra smiling and laughing before he actually gets into the act, and then the girl's clothes just being in a certain way, just being pushed aside in a way that is actually titillation. It's bizarre. So from that time till now, it's a huge, huge leap. But of course, it can still be better. So these things are relative in that sense.
I think as far as there's room for improvement, we'll only be better. Can't reach perfection so soon. What about you, Huma?
I don't know what else to add to what has already been said. Is there room for improvement? Definitely. I could definitely get paid as much as my male co-stars. Having said that, have things changed? For sure. I think are better, more meteor paths written for women. Can they just not be an accessory to the hero's journey, but actually have more agency? And it's happening across, even, of course, a lot of shows and films are centered around women. I've been fortunate enough to star in some of those, but I feel even within this whole multiverse of this big action bonanza things, I think you are seeing women doing a little bit more, maybe not as much as we'd like them to. Like, I grew up on a healthy diet of unhealthy 90s Bollywood. I love Khoon Bhari Maang, as a kid that's the kind of stuff you like, right? And I was like, yeah, mujhe bhi aise badla lena hai, I can take my own badla, I don't need someone to come and rescue me. And I feel like no matter what genre, as long as we are just putting out women just doing things and not trying to box them, that these are womanly or gendered things that are acceptable or not acceptable, I'm perfectly fine. Let's have some more toxic women, in films, and it's perfectly okay. Let's have some toxic mothers. Why does mother have to be this holier than thou kind of a thing? Let's have just people ruffling feathers. I enjoy films like that, and I feel that is when you talk about popular culture, definitely it's one way that you're shaping young minds. But the idea is also to have fun, and I think somewhere we have to find a good balance of that.
Shades of grey are always welcome. Yeah. Would you like to add?
I think most of the things have been said, but as an aurat and the leader of an organization.
No, aurat is
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Leader of an organization like Breakthrough, I'll say yes, but there could be more. Because nuanced characters which shows, struggles that women have or achievements that women have are very few and far between. Either they're really very good and wonderful and fantastic mothers, or they're really bad, And I think there's been a lot of improvement, especially even with the OTT platforms, like the Made in India, Made in India, Made in Heaven. Those kind of things show people in their real kind of, approaches and nuances. I think we need more of that because we work with young people, and in the absence of nuanced stuff, they end up, using or watching things which add to their behaviors in a more regressive way than.
So I think the general consensus is that there has been a shift, but there's room for improvement. But there's another aspect. While we were discussing the panel, we were talking about, what else can be different, what else can help. Do all of you here agree that maybe we could do with more male characters that embody positive masculinity in order to reshape societal norms? Would you like to start, Huma?
Well, yeah, for sure, definitely. Why not? I think we have a few examples, although few and far in between, of men sort of being okay with not being the macho. And there's not like, I mean, there's a lot of glory to be the nice guy, soft, and to be in your soft boy era, as they call it, for sure. But again, like, there's a lot to be done. I still feel like there is this whole mentality which is about like making it like, putting men and women in these very specific gendered roles. The male is the provider, he's the alpha, he's supposed to be a certain way, he's not supposed to cry, he's not supposed to feel any pain, and the woman is either supposed to be, placed on a pedestal or supposed to be the vamp. And these are very clear, neat boxes that exist. And I'm like, no, but life is not like that. My father maybe grew up, with a certain mindset, but he's also quite soft and, sensitive. But does this not affect behavior in general? For sure. And as an artist, I feel the only way I can shake it up is, yeah, sure, if you have an alpha representation of a man, can I do that as well and be like, hey, because like I would get a script sometime, it says, oh, this is a strong woman. And I'm like, but I don't know any woman who's not strong. And strength doesn't come only in one shape or size or form. It comes in many different ways. So do we need more male representation, which is not the quote-unquote conventional? Definitely.
I would like to add that actually it's not the paucity of the male narrative or male characters that is a problem. It is the nuancing of them that needs addressing. I actually don't mind having lots of male narratives. If the problem is perhaps that it just like kills nuance for the female voice or the female narrative. The female characters are generally just foils to sort of create heroism for the women. To like look very weak around these men, and so essentially there is something that needs to be like sort of rewired at the level of creating itself, and that change cannot be enacted at the level of commerce or at the stage when you're already pitching the story. It needs to be done at the level of thinking itself, at the level of structuring a story, etc. So I feel a larger nuance can only come from deepening the way that we look at the world, and that's somewhere a duty that sort of is, that comes to the creators. And in my head, I feel it's a stronger responsibility that the men have than the women actually.
Would you like to chime in?
I mean, last year, and this friend of mine posted it some time ago, where I said last year 22 out of the 23 big films of the year had a man with a weapon on the poster. That's kind of telling of the pop culture world that we sort of like live in right now. There is a sense of like the macho hero is back, and there is, you're living in that world right now, and there is a certain amount. So even when you end up making something more nuanced or something more feminist or something where the male character is being is touching into a gentler side, they become morality tales with a hammer. And I think the tricky part is always being able to say, how do you bring nuance to a society that is not used to nuance in the first place? And I think that especially when you're making it for a much larger audience, that's always the battle that filmmakers and producers end up facing, is the fact that you're always told that no, this is meant for a much bigger audience, and so therefore you can't be subtle about it. And the moment is that, so it's tricky. It's in that place where right now it's tricky to be able to say, how do you end up? You'll find people like that in a lot of series, in a lot of stuff that's online or OTT or movies and that kind of stuff. But if you're talking about like pure pop culture, in the cinemas, in the movies, the kind of like, if you want to go blockbuster level, you won't find it right now. And that's a process that one needs to bring in to be able to start seeding that in. How, when, it's tricky. I think Shah Rukh Khan is the only person who's been able to sort of, be on, even though he's become an action hero right now, there's still a certain amount of gentleness that he brings into it. But he's the only one, really. Like, nobody else is doing that. Even Ranbir Kapoor's gone.
I think I would say that actually 2 months before this, I would be feeling very dismal about things. But actually the thumping success of 3 kind of like helps me debate the fact that nobody minds a small dose of feminism. Nobody. Like, you can still make a film like a blockbuster hit. So actually, we had this little tete-a-tete at Wong's about another film that kind of like basically got us a very big blockbuster this year, which was about this alpha man who's not human. And so basically that film got us talking, Mayank and I, at one point, and we were discussing how, and Mayank had a very valid point, and he said that we can't really depend on films to define our morality, like as a society, which I obviously debated with him, and we weren't really like going around in circles around this. And there's something that I took away home from that conversation where I was like, and I was like, now I actually have a comeback at you where I'm like, actually a bout of feminism, a dose of feminism doesn't really hurt anyone. It will still give us a box office. So this is the thing. Actually, the country is in a schizoid sort of place where I think it's the masala that is the most important ingredient over other things. The functionality of feminism, thisism, thatism is of less importance in a theatrical at the moment, and that is the reason why a Jawan is a hit, a Pathan is a hit, which are absolutely on the two different ends of the political spectrum. There can be like a Stree is a hit, but an animal is also a hit. So how do you explain this? How do you explain
I have a theory about this, and like also a question. My theory is that people in our country, or I guess everywhere, they just like something that's just anti-establishment or anti-something. It doesn't matter whether you genuinely resonate with
propaganda films have also done well.
Correct, that's what I'm saying, right? So if it's a Stree is also working, you'll have a not human film also doing very well, and the idea is you just sometimes, I think there's so much inherent rage or whatever you want to call it. Tanu Weds Manu also, where she comes in a towel and sits and say, "Haan, batao tum dikhne aaye ho." That's also a hit. So I feel maybe, is it that? But having said that, isn't it interesting for us to ponder about that a film like Stree, with this kind of dollop of feminism in the humorous horror comedy space, does so well? A lot of people today are moving very clearly to streaming services to watch content, which are actually more nuanced. And we all have these continuous debates about theatrical numbers falling. So that's something for all of us to reflect and ponder about, that this so-called conventional theatrical wisdom actually is not working.
Also, just adding to what you're saying, Huma, is that the bipolarity of the Indian viewer at the moment, because nobody wants this, is also number 1 and number 2 on Netflix at the moment, and so is like maybe a next Allu Arjun film. So I just sometimes don't understand what people like. Like they're like same people who are writing these extreme threads on like the positive masculinity representation, and nobody wants this because everyone's talking about this really feminist guy and all of that. But also the same women and the same men are also like going and like rooting for like, basically baying for blood in those films. So I just don't know. Sometimes I'm like, basically maybe we should just stop trying to look for nuance in these things.
No, I mean,
also to the sorry.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
no, also to the point that it's to what Mayank is saying is the fact that the films we grew up with in not only the 90s, but even if you go further back than that, like Padausan re-released in the movie theaters and saw it, and while it's really funny and you got great music, it really collapses in a feminist gaze today, like very very badly, right? But that's something that was considered normal up till the 90s. The fact that the not human film and a lot of and all his films are really questioned, with a very serious critical gaze and a feminist gaze, and everybody is like, dude, what the hell? At some point in time, the fact that there is outrage is already a big step that one is sort of like taken to that place, and it needs to keep having those kind of like checkposts, all the time.
No, I think it will. I mean, the content consumer and the creator are from the same society, right? They literally.
I love this little thing that's going on. I'm just loving
I
it.
know. I mean,
We can leave, guys.
I wish I knew there was a comeback. I would have come with.
We'll give you the room.
With the answer. No, so genuinely, I love. I think Javed Akhtar says this, that he wants the world to become better because it's affecting the movies. So it's not the other way around. And the fact that the consumer and the creator are from the same world, and they're reflecting that world. So if it was in the 70s the way Padausan was, the world was that. And the world isn't that. And I can tell you from every conversation that one makes and the world we've lived from, compared to before. If anything, I feel positive about it. One, of course, the fact that you call it out, right? But I start thinking, are we over imagining the impact of movies? Oh, the world is this and therefore they loved Animal. No, they were laughing at that guy. It doesn't mean that there is some celebration, they're condoning a guy, you should all become this. No. I think it might be a little reductive to then blame the audience because you are like this, or you're becoming worse because you love Joker. No. You can sometimes, movies is so many other things too, right? Sometimes you just love it for the performance. And that's what you saw in it. Somebody else saw something else. The reason why I'm optimistic is because if you compare it to other elements of politics around us, commentary on religion is impossible at the moment. You take commentary on partisan politics, impossible at the moment. You do feminism as your politics in your cinema, very possible. So if anything, we have actually gone ahead on that front, may have receded on other fronts. So between, again, since everything's relative, I think in feminism, we've taken a leap forward. In everything else, we may have gone backwards.
I mean, to answer that, I'll just say sometimes I feel I am on more panels talking about feminism than I actually am able to employ that in my scripts. And I really mean it, like from a creator's point of view, because actually I feel there's so much pushback from where I actually create, and I really fight tooth and nail with all my male co-writers and collaborators, and they know about it. And I sometimes lose future jobs with them because of that. But I just think that it's easier to talk about it in these kind of forums because they are cultural and they're so more open. And also there is a trend to come up, like look more woke. But I feel at the where it really matters, the changes are very cosmetic. That
I do agree. I think that is true. It's kind of like there's certain safe spaces where these conversations encourage. I'm like, yeah, totally agree with you, babe. But when it actually matters, no, it doesn't really actually percolate.
And can I quickly add to that? One of the reasons I feel is because everything is very hedged. Like everyone just takes a very limited risk because nobody actually operates from a conscience or a real motivation to change. Everybody operates from commerce, and so therefore anyway you're always on the fence. You never go fully in, even as a OTT head or somebody who's sort of backing the story as a showrunner, as a director. There is always that, the ambiguity always goes against you in the larger third act sort of outcome of the narrative. Like you may have started with something really deep and pure, but by the time the story is fully forming and ye bhi nikal de, ye bhi nikal de, ye bhi nikal de, ye bhi nikal de. So essentially what is left eventually is something that's very watered down, tokenist, and something just like seems very feminist from the outside because maybe it is about a woman, but it's not feminist just because it is actually has female characters or is directed by a woman. That's the other thing that by the idea of employment of so many women, something becomes feminist by default. Yes, but is it actually feminist? Is something that we really, that kind of nuance and discerning is also like sometimes, so many times I've seen that it's actually just patriarchy with a lipstick. It's nothing else.
No, I mean, there was a time, and we would see these movies, and we've all sort of also, I don't want to name them because what's the point? It's not like these are like the 3 great examples of something, but you would know what I'm talking about when the lead character may be female and she's going through hell through the movie, almost as if the audience is enjoying that. Yeah. And technically it's a feminist film, but film studies has a term called femjep, female in jeopardy. She's always going through hell. And there is a secret enjoyment that the male audience is seeking from it. Of course, eventually she'll win. But the whole movie was what? The whole movie was her going through that, right? So there is that.
Mostly directed by men.
Always directed by men. Always. And no, actually, there are some examples of women directors who've done the same. But, it's not exclusive to. But, there's the other thing that I mean, all of us probably have understood, which is why Vikram hasn't spoken as much, and I wouldn't like to speak as much either, is there's one thing to be an ally, and the other thing is an experience, a lived experience. And the one thing that I have understood, and most of the people around me have understood about feminism, is that men should keep their mut shut. So yeah.
No, I don't agree.
Speak when spoken to, that's it.
No, and can I say something? The Bollywood's portrayal of LGBTQ people is abysmal. Why can't you really portray how people are in real life? And in that spectrum of masculinity, things go absolutely all right. So how can we kind of strike a balance between what happens in real life, what you think the audience will buy and see, and what is real. So I think that is the same that goes with feminism, the same goes with masculinity also. I think there is a lot to actually explore in that, which I don't think is happening.
I think this is a conversation that can go on for another 1 hour, so I'm going to quickly switch the question and take it to you, Vikram. Again, while discussing this panel, and we were talking about it, when it came off, we were thinking, do you think the industry could do with like a gender sensitivity coordinator? Someone who kind of gives feedback or inputs to filmmakers, to screenwriters, to everybody who's involved in the making of the film, just to ensure that there is, inclusivity, sensitivity, and of course, it continues to help the filmmaker express his film?
I mean, it's a. I mean, maybe if that helps. I don't even, huh? Yeah, I know. We know which filmmakers need that, but no, I think okay from a personal standpoint, I think there's always that. But maybe this once you come to a certain age, automatically, and as a father of a daughter, there's automatically your viewpoint, your worldview starts to change automatically. You start to see things from not just your perspective, but multiple perspectives automatically. And now then you start to become more sensitive towards. And then you're automatically, I think, imbibing a lot more from the women who are working around you. You're listening a lot more to women working around you. You're taking in a lot more. You're asking for a lot more feedback. I get a feeling that if you actually force people to go through that, it might be a bit like, it's just your shackles go up. I mean, automatically. That tends to happen. To give you an example, there is a certain amount of yes, we have intimacy coordinators, but there is a certain amount of gender sensitivity that Netflix does before they get into every project, and it's about sensitivity overall. It's not just gender; it's just like overall sensitivity in a film towards other crew members. If you feel sexually harassed, if there's problem, this is the way to talk. This is not to talk. And the first time it happened, I remember we were like, what really is kind of going on over? Never happened before. So half the people were kind of, you had a lot of eye rolling happening. Like, oh, why do we have to be told all of this kind of stuff? But what we've done is that even if it's not a Netflix project, we've kind of carried doing that before every project we get into for the entire crew, so that once you are doing it every time, there's no more eye rolling. People know that it's going to happen. Now by the third time they're listening, and by the third time they're into it. But again, no one's gonna, people are not gonna. I know that some people are not.
Can you
gonna
give an example of what exactly? Of example of exactly what this would be in terms of in a lived experience of what you would do, what you would not do, according to Netflix?
No, so it's with Netflix. It's like you have somebody. There is I forget the name of the lady. She's lovely, and she comes on a call. Either it's face to face or on a call, and she would be able to say, here are examples of. A lot of times you don't know if someone says this to you, is this harassment or is this not harassment? If someone does this to you, is this harassment or not harassment? What do you do when this happens? What do you do when this happens? These things are kosher. These are absolutely not kosher. You cannot talk to people like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You cannot do this kind of stuff. So it's example based, and also it's very helpful. It really is helpful. But like I'm saying, the first time around, you have a lot of people.
Like a workshop for the director.
For the whole crew. It's for the whole crew. It's for director, ADs, everybody.
And if I can just add to that, what is also really helpful, because in my own experience, and of a lot of women who work on film, sometimes you don't know if this is an appropriate thing that somebody could have said to you or not. And also because you're not at that place where you're like, can I raise my hand and be like, okay, I'm uncomfortable with that. So it's really helpful for a lot of people to have these very clear set of guidelines, almost saying, listen, if someone talks to you, that is almost like teaching your child, good touch, bad touch. But sometimes, we often expect people, when they start working, to just understand these things, that this is how it's supposed to be. But no, actually, it's helpful because it empowers you in a way ki if somebody speaks to you this way, this is what you can do. These are steps you can take, and you can actually report it. Yeah, with actual examples.
It's actually really nice to hear that people are doing this, and I'm glad to know that you're also leading by example, so that's great. But while we talk about gender conscious narratives, I think with a lot of confidence I can say, and you can agree, that you've made extremely mindful choices in your career. So as an actor, what do you think what kind of a role do you think it plays when you're shaping gender narratives in the industry? But
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to talk about my own personal experience because I felt like I would sound like a hypocrite if I didn't actually acknowledge the fact that a lot of the choices that I am taking today or that are available to me are because of this changing shift in the business. And I think my individual career kind of reflects that. Whether it's been streaming or today I'm doing a lot of films which are sort of based around me or doing very strong characters, it's because there is a shift, and I can sense that when I'm discussing a script with somebody. It's coming from a place of more collaboration as opposed to, and of course I do still get offered those films where I'm just supposed to look good and I enjoy them as well, but I feel like I should have that choice as an artist and not just a particular kind of, because I know when I started working it was like, oh, you have to work with heroes and then you're a star and that's the journey you're supposed to be, and I'm like, but like, when do I get to be the hero? I also want that for myself, and I do think that those choices, that possibility is available, whether it's series, whether it's films, that choice is available to not just me but a whole lot of other of my colleagues, and they're really like tonking it. I get very inspired when I see a girl leading a film or doing the numbers or getting great reviews for a show or a film, because I feel like if you are paving the way, that means the way exists and you are shining that light for other people to follow. So no, it is changing, and I'm really blessed, not just women but also a lot of male collaborators. I work with directors, writers who are very, very empathetic to your journey as well. And for example, I did a film called Monica, Oh My Darling, and I remember pulling up a journalist, in fact, who said, oh, but you're playing a vamp. And I'm like, excuse me, this entire film is full of great characters, but you choose to call me a vamp in an interview. So that is just reflective of your mindset as well, right? I'm just a character who's making great choices, maybe using my body to get what I want, and why are you putting a judgment lens on it already? Right? Let's just talk about like this one sleeping with the boss's daughter. You're not calling him a villain. So but these are just also, I feel like it's tiring, but our job is to keep, I guess, having this conversation, and it's a push and pull, right? Like there's never like a complete answer to these things. You're always like in the process of just being better than who you were yesterday. Like I've made choices perhaps in my career that I may not entirely be like, okay, but you do those things, and then you pick yourself up and be like, okay, I can do better now, and I've learned from that experience. And I feel when we have these conversations about gendered roles, it's also about educating other people. Or sometimes maybe that person doesn't know better. And I'm not saying it's the burden is on women or men, but I think it's a collective responsibility that we all share.
I really hope you're spoiled for choices sometime. Right now you're saying they're far and few, but I hope at some point you're spoiled for choices and you don't know which role should I pick. There's so many of the ones that I want to do.
I can't complain, to be honest. I really can't.
Yeah, really nice. Of course, you guys portray their characters and bring them all to life, but there's someone here, screenwriters, who actually give all of you life, give the actors life. I think as a screenwriter, what are the kind of trends that you are seeing emerging in films and in media that you think can help further the conversation when it comes to gender equality?
I think the fact that we kind of sort of deepening the conversation around the narratives, and we basically want to do more of grey characters. It gives chance for flawed characters to appear, which basically means we can like have a spectrum of humanity where women are more flawed, men can accidentally or surprisingly be more positive, where actually male characters, while they kind of lead a narrative, can still hold space for flawed women characters. So I think the fact that we have a story that can be told in now 8 parts and we have enough space for each character to grow also gives in fact it's a commercial reason also for you to have well-rounded women characters who have a wholesome journey, so that it's like everyone has a bit of like representation in the story itself. So I think this sort of like allows us to do more sort of like nuanced work. I just wanted to say one thing definitely that's been on my mind, where I feel that the work there is that burden on women, for example, to sort of like show the light, etc. while that is happening parallelly, I feel that even though men, while they don't identify with women's experience or they want to keep away from it, something occurred to me when I watched Manthan in its restored version that released last year, and I realized, it's just like it occurred to me that Shyam Benegal, all his narratives had a way of basically they were all male narratives, but they were all centered around the man who was checking his own hypocrisy and reigning in his entitlement, and the minute he was doing that and constantly calling himself out in the narrative in Manthan or in other films, he was allowing the women characters to thrive. So while the story, the narrative was continually led or basically bookmarked by the opening journey of the opening shot would always be about the man and the closing shot would always be about the man, the women grew. And so I feel that's the path, that's the way you do it. No one is saying don't make films about what you know best, but just if you check yourself in through the decision making of your characters, automatically the other sort of journeys are going to spring up and reveal themselves. I feel that is where maybe the solution is. So Manthan sort of helped me understand that it's actually not so much me that needs to change, or I think I've bloomed with what I wanted to do. I think it's my peers, the male allies who actually want to support me, who need to sort of now come up and rise to the job.
We hope that happens. I'm going to quickly move to Mayank now. Mayank, you've been a journalist for very long and you've been writing about films for how long now? 20 plus, over 2 decades, right?
20 plus means 21 only, no?
हाँ ठीक है 22 भी हो सकता है. Maybe you don't know the exact number, so we'll just go with over 2 decades.
Yeah.
As a journalist and as a critic, how important do you think is intersectional approach in your analysis of films, in films and pop culture?
No, I mean, a movie is about something, right? Always. And I think I got interested in movies because I'm interested in the world, instead of the other way around. Because it's almost like reporting on a related but alternate universe all the time, week after week. I think anybody who watches a movie will have multiple approaches and lenses to watch it from, and in a very rudimentary way, reductive way. You will see it from a very narrative approach for what the story is. You'll see it from an auteur approach in terms of who the person is, what they've made in the past. You'll see a historical approach, where does it fit into where, in history of cinema itself, etc., etc. Sure, one of the approaches will be a feminist approach as well, and that needs to be there. My issue is when only one lens is looked at, and then how you define everything through that one lens. It could be any lens. Right, because the movies is lots of other things too. So, so that's the only time that, let's say, even I think that was a conversation we had about animal. You can't just see things with just one lens. There are other things in it too, and of course, you should call out from whichever lens you see and view whatever you do. So that intersectionality happens on its own, and a film will always be about something. So you will sort of look at it from what it is about. It's and you will see it from beyond that as well when you're commenting on it. It's like that famous CLR James line, right? What do they know of cricket who only cricket know? So obviously you need to know a little bit more about the world as well and the arts as well. And there's a technical approach you should be able to look at from those lenses too. So it's a whole lot of things. And yes, to answer your question, feminism is also an approach to watch a film through.
So I just want to add that feminist. I mean, I have a comeback for you. That I think feminism is not.
I'm so surprised.
Feminism is not. I feel that is where I feel somewhere this is a very flawed reading of feminism. Feminism is nothing but a plea for equality.
Yes, absolutely.
At no point feminism is asking for control of the narrative itself.
Absolutely.
It is all it's saying is that we want an we want equity in the frame.
In the opportunity. Yeah.
So there is actually just looking at the power dynamic between different characters in a frame, and if there are women characters, and if there is the narrative leading a certain kind of subjugation, or is it something that is totally unintentional, and if it's unintentional, it needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
So outside of that, the fact that certain films, of course there will be, I don't think I have a problem with chronicling dysfunction or like flawed characters. I have no problem in having actually characters like Joker, because the thing is, Joker is not a film which just like which celebrates dysfunction or dysfunctional character, or it basically foregrounds it. Yes, maybe relishes in its aesthetic, but actually has a narrative which punishes the principal character.
Yeah.
But Animal does not do that. So that's the difference between, that's the difference I feel between a film that enjoys
I did
its
not
own
like Animal.
toxicity.
Just to put it on record, I did not like the movie. So
A film that enjoys its own toxicity compared to a film that chronicles something toxic. I think there's a difference there, and that nuance, I mean, I hardly need to teach somebody who's been doing it for 21 years.
I hope not.
I smell a collaboration.
Okay, guys, I'm not an animal panel, so I'm going to
Yeah.
move away from there. My last question is to you, but before the mic now working. Sorry. Okay, my last question is to you, but before we go ahead, I'd like to congratulate you and the entire team at Breakthrough for completing 25 years. So congratulations and thank you for all the amazing work all of you are doing.
Thank you. Thank.
They're working?
Is it? Yeah. Right.
My question to you is, in this journey, how do you see like a positive collaborative experience, especially within the film industry, in order to drive positive approaches to, further the conversations that you all are fighting so hard to bring to life every day?
Before that, on the feminism question, you said equity, but since we haven't had equity for a long time, sometimes we'd like to kind of control the narrative as well and dominate that. So yes. But, partnering with Bollywood is so difficult. Sorry to say that, but yeah. So we've been lucky, and we'd like to do more of that. And let me kind of try and talk a little bit about the work that we do and why it's important to, we work to shift norms, and at a very grassroots level. Yeah, we work mostly in rural areas, but our social media goes out to nationally to everybody. In that, films play a major role because they often lay down the culture. In the panel just before that, there was a conversation about how violence is filmy. The violence that we see in screen is filmy, and people are not taking that home with them. They know that this is impossible. But somewhere at the back of the mind, the young boy in UP who watches Animal knows that, that at the end of the day, violence is something that he can resort to. And, I don't know whether you know that in UP, boys watch videos made of gang rapes because they don't have any progressive content to watch. So in this kind of a milieu, can we not have more progressive content? I know that's not a favorite word for most of you, but can't we have more, progressive, nuanced characters that I can actually identify with? If I'm living in a small little village in Gorakhpur, can I not have that? And that is why, we've been trying to actually really, most organizations like ours would reach out to Bollywood to be ambassadors or champions or come and, inaugurate something. But here we are actually asking for a partnership. Can we not look at the experiences that our young people, in the age group of 11 to 25, who's going to be the generations will be watching your films over the next, 50 years. Can we not ask them what they would like to watch, and can we not build that and help you build that into your films, into your content, into your writings? So is there a possibility of a partnership at a much more deeper level than just just being part of a panel? So and I think that is Fursat Mein Serious Baatein has been an attempt at doing that, and Vikram was in the first season, and it was and I think your episode was one of the best episodes that we had in the first season. So can we not have more of that? Like Huma, we've been reaching out to Huma for years, and
She's here
I've been your volunteer.
she's been our
You
volunteer. Yes.
indoctrinated me really young.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I was
yeah,
in
yeah.
when I was in Delhi, I used to volunteer with Breakthrough as a student volunteer. Yeah.
She's come to our event in Haryana. So can we have not more deeper allyship, partnership? That's my only humble request to you.
Let's hope we reach out to more people through this and it does shift. But I'm going to end this panel on a slightly positive note. I know we've spoken about, what needs to change and the nuances that we need to apply to filmmaking and storytelling. But is there a film that comes to everyone's mind when I talk about a film that has broken gender stereotype? I can think of one. I don't know if you're going to go in chorus in the recent time, but is there a film that comes to your mind instantly? Yeah. Thappad, okay, yes. What about the panelists?
I don't know about recent times, but Mahanagar recently released in the theaters, Satyajit Ray, and I thought that was amazing.
Amazing. I was just thinking of the same
Yeah,
film.
Mahanagar actually is about
remastered
gender
and-
roles, gender
yeah.
norms, and sort of like, and I think it's so new age, even so that's the film for
And
everyone to
sensitive
watch.
men,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fantastic, in those
So
days.
yeah, and wounded masculinity, like portrayal of it is so beautiful that you actually feel sorry for this person. So
Urban angst, all of that. Yeah, fantastic.
I mean, you could treat this as a reco because it's not very popular, but it's a documentary on Amazon Prime Video. A friend of mine, Jaideep Sarkar made. It's called Rainbow something. Rainbow Rishta, and I love the fact that it's an LGBT documentary, but it's genuinely about love, and it's really about what their life is like, rather than it's just pure joy, and you just see joy from a lens that is otherwise shown as all the issues in life. I'm sure those issues exist, but I'm sure there's a lot of happiness there too. So it's a very happy documentary that I thought was something that one could recommend.
Well, there are far more intelligent people on this panel, so I'll go for the popular choice, and I'll say Stree. No, because I love comedy and I really enjoy watching comedy films, but I feel often in the big funny comedy movies, there's not much for the women to do. You're either the receiving end of the joke or you're the setup, but not the punchline, and I resent that. I'm like, no, and I feel like this was just a fun film. Like, I really enjoyed it. I would like to now see another, like, just a girl hangover or something just fun, crazy like that. Like, why not? Maybe I can produce it. Maybe I am.
Oh, okay.
Well, I like Lapata Ladies because it ticked all the boxes, but it was too good to be true. So, but we did take it around to all the, many villages that we work, and we did screenings, and the women there really identified, and like shouting and saying, yes, maine ghungat utha diya, and and that's literally kind of, took their ghungats off and stuff like that. But so it's helped a lot. But, I also felt that it's really, really too good to be true. Yeah. Fantasy.
Well, I can't think, so clearly I'm either not watching enough or...
You're making movies.
I need to sort of like do more. I mean, recently, if I have to think about, besides Lapata Ladies and Stree, I think Undercurrent, the Malayalam film, was the one... Again, very refreshing to see a story about women, and it's not... and I mean, the men in the film were just the typical sort of stereotypical men, but it was always nice to see tables turned. It's always nice to sort of see that happening in a film. I thought always lovely to see strong actors, strong female characters. I mean, and a great sort of narrative about female gaze. It was quite nice.
All right, thank you so much for joining me, and I really, really appreciate that all of you removed the time and all came here. But thank you so much, and thank you guys for joining us. Thank you.